Just because you have MS doesn't mean the future is set. This is where you are right now. It's not necessarily where you're going to be. To realize that is really important.
Oh, Amanda nailed it. Modern therapies are much more effective than the older therapies. And so the vast majority of our patients who are newly diagnosed are going to probably do very well.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Amanda Foreman, and welcome to Talk About It and my new podcast, which is all about my experience and your experience with MS. This program was made possible through an independent educational grant from Sanofi and Mylan Specialty LP, a Viatris company. Sanofi and Viatris had no influence on the content of the podcasts or any aspect of this program.
We're back. It's Talk About It. We're talking about MS.
Mm-hmm.
Mandy Foreman is here. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me.
So my pleasure.
You always make me look better. My acting is better when we're acting together.
Well.
From Felicity, from Alias, from Star Trek, all the things that we've worked on together.
Correct.
But in life, I think my life certainly is better with you.
Mine too, with you.
Thank you.
We always talk about all our stuff.
Exactly. And now it's like, hey, how's your hip? Hey, what's going on? Is your hair going to grow back? I mean, it's like, it's just unbelievable. No, this is really special. The first episode was just amazing.
He's so knowledgeable. I'm so excited we have another episode with him.
I know. And the him that we're talking about is Dr. Bruce Cree, professor of clinical neurology from the University of California, San Francisco. And if you haven't listened to the first episode, go back.
Yeah,
if you haven't watched that,
come on,
go back.
Yeah.
But you're going to really enjoy the questions that we have for this. And these, half the questions have come in from the community, the MS community. The other has come from us. So I hope you enjoyed part one. Part two of our conversation with Dr. Bruce Cree starts right now.
Hi again. Welcome back.
Hi.
So
You did such a good job, by the way. This is your callback. This is as actors. This is what we
if you do well, you get the job.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
all. This is your screen test. So I have another question. There are always headlines about new treatments for MS. What are the ones? How are they different from what we already have?
And what's on the horizon?
And
too.
what's on the horizon?
Yeah, great question. So when we think about MS therapies that we had, 25 years ago is the start of all of this, right? And it began with interferons, and glutamer acetate came in a little bit after that. And these were self-injected medicines, lots of side effects, and only modestly effective, right? They did a little bit. They did something, but not enough. And then we had more therapies that came through, some immune suppressants. Natalizumab was the big game changer. That was the first highly effective treatment that could be often used safely, but it was an IV infusion every month. Since then, we've had many other therapies. We have several oral treatments that are very effective, and then highly effective B-cell depleting antibody therapies, the most recent of which was added to the armamentarium called ublituximab. Now, that sounds like something out of Dr. Seuss.
It sure does,
right?
the Oobleck.
Yep.
Bartholomew.
And I wonder whether that was intentional or not, but I don't really know. But anyway, this is a medication that depletes B cells, like ocrelizumab, like ofatumumab. Those medications are called Ocrevus and Kesimpta. Those are their trade names. Ublituximab's trade name is Briumvi. And that's the most recent drug that came to market just a couple years ago. Its advantage is that it is infused very quickly, or can be infused very quickly. Patients can get an infusion over an hour, as opposed to several hours for ocrelizumab. And in some people, that infusion time can be reduced to only 30 minutes.
Wow.
And since the drug is infused only twice a year, for many people, it means you go in, you get your drug, you go out, you go about your day, and
depending on how you feel after the infusion, because sometimes, in my experience, sometimes you feel a little woozy, a little out of it after getting.
Part of the wooziness is the Benadryl that's used.
I don't take it.
And for ublituximab, you don't have to take it. We actually give cetirizine for that.
Yeah.
And so people can come in and get treated and not feel woozy and weird afterwards. By and large, I would say it's about 95% of people who can get infused that quickly and just be fine, and then they just go on about their day. So I think that's actually pretty good. So you're getting 2 infusions a year, highly effective drug associated with extremely low disease activity, profound effect in terms of disability over the long term.
Great.
So it kind of hits all the high points. And so that's a great place for the field today, for our patients to be able to have so little treatment do so much for them.
And what about the pipeline? I mean, are you hopeful?
Yeah, okay. So
looking forward?
The pipeline is interesting. We got to this point where we've got, we went from slightly effective drugs with lots of side effects to incredibly effective drug administered twice a year.
Yeah, it's incredible.
With very little side effects, right? So that's the 25 years of medical progress. So we're in a great place. Now the field is focused really on 2 main areas of unmet need. One of the unmet needs is to address progressive multiple sclerosis and to slow the rate of progression or perhaps even arrest progression once people have gotten into the progressive phase of the disease. And so there are several drugs which are being investigated in this area. The one that had the big success earlier in the year is the Hercules trial with tolebrutinib. Now, this is not an FDA-approved drug yet. It is still under review, so this is an experimental therapy. There's no brand name. You can't get it. It's not on market, but it showed an effect, very impressive effect, in non-relapsing secondary progressive MS patients. These are people who started with a relapsing course, who now have secondary progressive MS and are getting worse and worse despite treatment. And these patients actually showed a profound effect of treatment with tolebrutinib on disability worsening. So this was very exciting. This is the first trial that really showed an effect of a medication in this non-relapsing form of multiple sclerosis. This is one of the big unmet needs. And so we're very hopeful that we are going to see that drug come to market in the months to come.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So somebody listening to this now, they're like, okay, you say it's not available. I could really use the help now. So only a couple of months, it might become available?
Yeah, so the FDA was supposed to make a decision about the product at the end of September. They kicked the can down the street by 3 months, so now we're going to get a decision by the end of December, which realistically means if it does get approved, that it should become available, generally speaking, about 6 months later, because from the time of FDA approval to the time it gets on formulary with every plan, there's always a delay.
And you got to find a name.
So that's going to be about a 6-month period.
So you mentioned all these options and ways to get the medication. This question plays right into that. There are so many ways to take MS medications, pills, injections, infusions. How do people with MS figure out which option is best for their lifestyle and treatment goals? And for the people who may find daily or frequent injections challenging, what longer-acting options currently are available, and then obviously in the future? And you sort of answered that already.
Yeah. I think things have really changed. And, the days where glutathione acetate was an injection every single day, that changed. And now it's 3 times a week, and there's a new product also on the horizon where it's even less frequently injected by a depot injection. And so I think patients are going to be taking advantage of that for the GA product. You're absolutely right. There are injectable medicines, there are infrequently injected medicines, there are IV-infused medicines, and there are oral medicines. And so when we're going through and keeping all these medications in mind, we have to really focus on what the treatment goals of our patient who we are working with, what their goals might be, what they want for themselves. And so a big part of our job as MS specialists is to really suss out from our patients what it is they want. As the patient, what are your goals? Do you want to be on a highly effective therapy? Do you want to be on the safest possible therapy? And so there's always a trade-off, unfortunately, between some rare safety issues, PML, progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy, and often lethal brain virus infection, that's associated with many, but not all, MS therapies. And so if you're willing to take a small risk of PML, 1 in 100,000 risk, it opens up a lot of therapies. If you're not willing to take any risk for PML, then you are looking at other medications that are perhaps a little less effective. And so there are several drugs that are not associated with PML, the interferons, the glutamate acetates, teriflunomide. Those drugs are not associated with PML, whereas the fumarates are, the S1P receptor modulators are, even the B-cell depleting antibody therapies can rarely be associated with PML. And of course, the king of PML is natalizumab, Tysabri.
I took it.
And that, you took it?
Uh-huh.
Are you still on it?
No.
Okay.
I didn't notice really anything different with it. It was fine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. My doctor has people on it for years because they feel so much better on it, and she monitors them very closely and hasn't had any incidences of PML, thank God.
Yes.
But yeah, I was warned against it by so many doctors, like, you can't take this, but I don't know. I didn't have any adverse reaction.
Oh, I'm glad about that. Yeah. PML,
It seems like
PML is no joke.
No
for sure.
joke. That kind of feeds into the next question, which is some people say it's better to start strong when it comes to MS treatment, while others suggest starting slow and adjusting as needed. So like I was told, don't bring an anvil to a thumbtack. Like if you have, sort of a mild case, you don't need the hardest medication. But what do you think about that? Because I don't know how I feel about that. I was told.
It's a great question. And I think we're pretty much have answered most of that at this point. There are actual clinical trials going on to address this very question itself. But the observational data that has been gathered from multiple centers across the world is now quite clear. When it comes to MS, actually when it comes to medicine in general, we're very good at assessing how somebody is right now, and we have a much harder time telling how somebody is going to be doing a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road.
Right.
Knowing that somebody's got a relatively mild case of MS now doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to do poorly in the future. And so when you don't know what's going to happen, but you do know in general that a lot of people living with MS get disabled, it does stand to reason that using the most effective medications that you have available currently is probably the way to go. And the observational data actually is supporting that. When we look at people who were started shortly after diagnosis with highly effective therapies and compare those patients to ones who were started on the less effective therapies, who had treatment escalation once disease activity was identified, the people who were started the more effective therapies tended to do better. So I just presented data at the ECTRIMS meeting last month in Barcelona with a clinical trial where patients were randomized to receive either ublituximab versus teriflunomide. And we looked at disability over time. And so we had up to 6 years of data on these patients. And it turns out that the people who were first started on teriflunomide and then switched over to ublituximab never caught up in terms of disability worsening compared to the people who were on ublituximab from the get-go. So early treatment with ublituximab over the 6 years of the study was associated with much better disability outcomes than the people who started off in teriflunomide and then were switched over.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So, and that's one example. There are many other examples of that.
Yeah.
And I think we've pretty much answered this question. My bias is very clearly to use the most effective drug we have for our patients because of the uncertainty.
Right.
I don't know what the future holds.
So what about long-term brain health? Like lately there's been talks more about protecting long-term brain health, not just stopping relapses. And are there medications for MS that can treat, that can target brain health?
Yeah, so when I think about brain health, I'm thinking about prevention of disability for my patients. And I am always thinking about how to prevent the onset of secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. So for me, a patient who starts off with relapsing MS, the big bad in the room is secondary progressive MS, right? They've may have had a relapse, they may have been treated with a corticosteroid, they may have recovered, they may feel fine. But the whole thing is, what's going to happen in 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to need a cane to walk? Are they going to be in a wheelchair? And that's the problem with MS, is that it isn't just relapses, it is this other aspect of disability worsening. So I'm always going to be thinking about what I can do to maximize the likelihood that my patients are not going to become disabled over time. So that's how I, as a neurologist, think about brain health. There are other aspects to it too, right? So disease-modifying therapy, selecting a disease-modifying therapy that has a robust effect in terms of disability is critical.
Mm-hmm.
But going beyond that, you also have to be thinking about what else can we do to help the patient.
Right.
What are the comorbidities somebody may have that could influence MS? Do they have hypertension? Do they have diabetes? Or are there other issues that need to be addressed? And then healthy living becomes incredibly important, right? What can we do to maximize the overall health of the person? Should we check a vitamin D level? Do we have good control over vitamin D? What about calcium? Are they taking calcium supplements? As patients get older, have they had a bone densitometry study? A lot of the time, my patients who are over the age of 50 haven't had a bone densitometry study. They haven't been ordered by their primary care physician. I don't know why. They should be, right? That's part of standard of care. So we wind up ordering bone densitometry, making sure that bone health is good. Why? Because MS patients are at much higher risk for osteopenia, osteoporosis, which is why we emphasize the vitamin D and calcium and weight-bearing exercises and all that stuff. So we want to keep people as healthy as possible. And, brain health also means being active and getting out and doing things that give your life meaning.
Right.
And keeping yourself engaged and not hiding because of the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. So these are all critical components.
Absolutely.
Coming up on Talk About It.
Knowledge really is power. I was too afraid to even ask about it when I was diagnosed. I was so scared. I had always been scared of this disease, and then I got it. But the first thing I would say is, how are you feeling emotionally? Can you handle this giant fire hose of information that's going to be coming at you? And the more you know, the better you do.
With so many options out there, it's easy to feel overwhelmed for a lot of people. How do people figure out which treatment is best for them and a best fit for their unique situation?
Well, everybody's different, and everybody has MS affects everybody differently, and each person may have their own tolerance for risk. No drug is without side effects. Everything has side effects. And so certain side effects for one person may be an absolute no-go. Other people may be willing to put up with a rare but serious side effect in order to maximize treatment outcomes.
Yeah.
So we always have to be listening to our patients, trying to figure out what their personal treatment goals are, and tailoring the therapy as best we can to each individual's goals for themselves. Fortunately, we have many choices available today. We have our tried and true interferons and glutamers, and we have oral therapies, which are actually pretty good. The fumarates and the S1P receptor modulators are actually pretty good treatments. And then we have the monoclonal antibody therapies, which are all highly, highly effective drugs. So we've got a wide variety of medications to choose from that are disease-modifying therapies. And a big part of the job is just trying to match the drug with the patient. And so it doesn't matter what I think the best drug in the world is. If it sits in somebody's shelf and they're not taking it, I haven't really helped them out, So a big part of what I try to do in working with my patient is to figure out what is going to work for them, for their lifestyle, for their needs, and what their goals of treatment are.
So having gone through this, you are so positive, you are so proactive.
Yes.
And just sitting here listening to you, I mean, you could be a doctor in this. You've learned so much.
Well,
so what would you say to somebody who's recently diagnosed and to encourage them to get more involved, talk to their physician?
I would say that first, It's really scary, and depending on how they respond to the diagnosis, because that made me fall apart. I fell apart. And it wasn't until I started taking an antidepressant that I could stop crying. So that is the first question I would say, would be, how are you with this diagnosis? Some people are like, oh yeah, I've got this thing. And of course, now, as we've discussed, there are so many treatments.
Yeah.
So the prognosis is much more positive. But the first thing I would say is, how are you feeling emotionally? Can you handle this giant fire hose of information that's going to be coming at you? And can you assess it and put it into your life? Yeah, knowledge really is power. I was too afraid to even ask about it when I was diagnosed. I was so scared. I had always been scared of this disease, and then I got it. Great. But now I've realized that the more you know, the better you do. And so I would encourage people to
And also, do you have a PA in your office that really works with the patients? Because we found in the epilepsy world, my son, it's just the more you have, the more dialogue you have, the better relationship you have with the provider and everyone in the office. It's just so empowering.
Yeah, we don't have a PA in our office. We've got fantastic nurses, and our back office is amazing. We have embedded pharmacists who also do a lot of patient education when it comes to medication. I just couldn't be happier with our pharmacy team. Shout out to them if they happen to be listening on this podcast, as well as our amazing nurses. They keep the lights running. And then we have an incredible group of infusion specialists and folks who do all the scheduling and all that back office stuff. It's really an amazing group. And I just have to say, we are so fortunate to have so many incredibly gifted people who are dedicated to patient care, who help our patients go through what is really kind of the worst day of their life, and then get them through all of that, and then on to a course of treatment and through the process of recovery. And so it's really quite amazing, and it's so great to be part of that kind of team. This is something that we're so fortunate to be able to have at UCSF, where we've got a dozen MS specialists and even a larger number of support staff who are there to take care of our patients.
I just think it's important that people realize that wherever you are, and if you're listening to this, you're watching this, there are so many people out there to talk to about it within these offices. And don't be afraid to engage. Don't be afraid to be persistent, right? I mean, it's important.
Can I make one other comment here just about like this new diagnosis and this uncertainty? I think another great resource that's out there is the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. And their website is nmss.org. And there are local chapters all over the country. And the local chapters often have a support group for newly diagnosed patients. And so that's actually a great way for people who are newly diagnosed with MS to learn something. It's an incredibly well-vetted, well-curated site, and I have to say that this is something that every patient who's living with MS needs to know about.
Yeah, it is. I have to say that when I was first diagnosed, I wasn't in any way ready to go declare myself a member of this community and to even admit that to myself. Because I would say to doctors, well, if you don't think I'm going to get better, then what are we doing here? And the point is, this is where you are right now. It's not necessarily where you're going to be. And you have to come to realize that is really important, because just because you have MS doesn't mean the future is set. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. Took me a long time to come to terms with, like, yes, I do have this illness, but that's not necessarily going to be the course of my life. So yes, that resource is great. The MS Society is fantastic. And of course, I go on that website all the time. But in the very moment that you're diagnosed, you may not be ready to accept that as part of who you are. It's a real mindset change.
And that's normal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it is a great resource, but it's that sort of adjusting your idea of who you are and how you thought your life was going to be is a gigantic
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's
thing.
something everybody goes through because just about everybody gets a chronic illness at some point.
I know.
Right?
I know when people online, on social media, everything's perfect, life's perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody's got something.
Oh,
and
Facebook, where everything is always absolutely
Exactly.
perfect. Yeah?
Instagram.
But when you say, we talk about it all the time on Talk About It. Everybody's got something, and if you don't have it now, it's coming.
It's probably coming.
Unfortunately, it is. So you answered this question in the last episode, but I just want to hear you say it again because it's so hopeful. There's so much out there. There's a lot of exciting science happening in MS. What are researchers, what are you working on or hearing about people working on right now that might help people with MS in the near future? What are you most excited about?
Right. So we kind of talked a little bit about, we started to talk about one of the Bruton's tyrosine kinase inhibitors, tolebrutinib, and that's the one which is closest to FDA approval, but there are several others in development. Another one called fenbrutinib is also in late development. We haven't seen the results from the phase 3 trials yet, but those are going to be reported soon, and so we should have more information about fenbrutinib by the end of the year or maybe early next year. So this is another Bruton's tyrosine kinase inhibitor, and there's another one called remibrutinib. And so there are going to be at least 3 of these that are in late phase 3 development. And there are multiple others that are earlier in development. And so this is going to be a whole class of drugs that are being developed to address that ongoing inflammation within the brain that is not affected by drugs that work on the peripheral immune system. And so hopefully they will all work, and some of them will be safer than others and perhaps better than others. And so we'll have to see how the data all shakes out here, but this is a very exciting area of development, that there are so many of these drugs, and these are going to be oral therapies that are taken typically once a day. So, whether they're going to be used in combination with another medication or on their own remains to be determined. But that there's so much in development is actually very, very exciting. And then the other area of unmet need is in myelin repair and neurorestoration strategies. And so we're hopeful to see some of those approaches come to fruition. One of my colleagues is just finishing up a trial with bezadoxifene. Bezadoxifene is used in Europe in postmenopausal women as treatment for hot flushing and menopausal symptoms. And maybe it's going to be helpful for promoting myelin integrity and myelin repair. So that's kind of exciting. And I'm really looking forward to seeing those results as well.
I have a great question. People with progressive MS often say that they have had fewer treatment options. Is that starting to change?
It's starting to change, but generally speaking, I agree. It's the number of treatment options for patients with progressive MS is limited. And even our best therapies are only modestly effective. It's kind of like where we were today for progressive MS is where we were at the start of MS therapies 25 years ago with interferon. Yeah, we largely addressed, not completely, but largely addressed relapsing MS. Now the work is really lasered in on progressive disease and trying to understand what's different about progressive MS from relapsing disease, address the underpinnings there, and come up with therapeutic options for our patients that are going to be effective in progressive MS. And I'm quite confident that the next 10 years is going to see major breakthroughs in treatment of progressive disease. I think the Bruton's tyrosine kinase inhibitors that we spoke about are going to be the start of it. There's another class of therapeutics that I'm very keen to see move along called CAR-T therapies. These are chimeric antigen receptor engineered cells that we reprogram to do specific functions. These were originally developed for the application in oncology and have been transformative in the treatment of cancer patients. But we are leveraging that technology to apply it to autoimmune disease, including diseases like lupus and Sjogren's syndrome, myasthenia gravis, and multiple sclerosis. So we're just at the start of those treatments.
These new MS treatments, do they work equally well for everyone? Or do you tell a patient like, well, you're lucky, you're young, so, or race, gender? How does that all affect the efficacy of these medications?
Great question. So when we conduct trials, we try to balance the needs of the trial to have a generally healthy population, so you're not having people die from heart attacks during the trial or cancer or whatever.
Right.
Right.
So you want kind of a generally healthy population, but a population which is representative of persons living with MS, and so that's a tall order. And we do the best we can, and we recruit these studies, and we get maybe 1,000 patients into a trial, and it's hopefully going to be representative of what that patient population is supposed to look like. If we get studies that are large enough, we can do. After the trial is done, we can look at some subgroups and say, okay, well, how did the drug work in women? How did it work in men? How did it work in young women? How did it work in young men? Is race a modifier? Were we able to get enough people in the study of sufficiently diverse racial backgrounds where we can address this question in a meaningful way? And again, it depends on the study and where the study was conducted. Not too surprisingly, if you do your entire trial over in Eastern Europe and the Ukraine, you're probably not going to get a very diverse population, But trials that are done in the U.S. can have a sufficiently broad number of individuals of different backgrounds where we can begin to address these questions. And one of the things that I've been very interested in is the impact of race in multiple sclerosis and trying to understand whether there are racial factors that influence disease activity and prognosis for our patients. And so we also want to know whether the treatments work generally in people of diverse backgrounds.
And gender, too.
So the genetics are important, and the population ancestry is important. All these things factor into therapeutic success. And so the larger the studies we have that are more representative, the easier it is to address these questions.
I love it.
Coming up on Talk About It.
How should people think about the trade-off when deciding on a medication?
It's a great question. So the individual has to decide for themselves what level of risk they're comfortable with. Go through the risks and benefits, explain what the overall risk profile for each product is, and help that individual come up with a choice that's right for them.
All right, I just wanted to pop out for a second and just talk about when you because you hold your right hand lower and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How emotional was it for you when that moment when you kind of going, oh, I can't use my hand the way I used to?
It wasn't a moment. It was over time. And it's frustrating, but I'm left-handed, so that makes things a lot easier.
Southpaw.
I'm a southpaw.
Southpaw.
More accident-prone, supposedly.
Exactly.
I can still do stuff with my right hand, but the articulation isn't great.
Yeah. Do you purposely avoid using or trying to use your right hand now?
Yeah.
But you never really did. You don't write with your right hand?
I don't. But I used to bat with my right hand. So there goes my baseball career.
Exactly. But you can still go to your left on a basketball court.
Baseball.
Sports. This is suddenly a sports podcast. Anyway, let's get back to the interview.
Is MS treatment something that people are on for life? Or are there cases where the medication can eventually be stopped, do you feel?
Great question. So a lot of the time when we begin a disease-modifying therapy, we don't really have a plan in mind about when to end it.
Right.
And you've raised a key question. After 10, 15, 20 years of treatment with a therapy, is it enough? And how do we know? And so this is a key question. So we're trying to address that question right now in our own study called the EPIC study at UCSF, which we've been following patients for 20 years. And some of these patients have been on disease-modifying therapies for 25 years. So we want to know whether we've cured their MS. Are there people there in that group of individuals who had long-term exposure to treatment who don't have any evidence of any ongoing MS residual disease activity? Some of these patients have gone off of therapy, and so we want to know, how they're doing, and are they stable? Are they doing well? And is their MS for all practical purposes cured?
It's
Obviously,
so tricky, though.
Those lesions are still there. We can't make the lesions go away. The extent of disability they had during the course of living with MS, I mean, they've those things, those deficits are still there.
Yeah.
But we want to know whether it's static, and is it static off of therapy? And we don't have answers to that yet. There have been a couple trials that have tried to investigate this that have had technical issues with study. A lot of the time, people don't want to go off of therapy.
Well, I was just going to say that.
Because you don't know. I mean, you look fine, but yeah, like we've talked about, the smoldering MS could be doing damage underneath that we're not even aware of until we are aware of it.
Right, and the only way to know if you're cured is you titrate too far down, and then you're like, oh boy, it's really it's scary with any condition.
I think so, and so knowing that there's probably some tipping point here where side effects of the medication, especially the immune suppressing medications that we use, as people get older, those side effects might outweigh the benefits, right? And so you have to be thinking about, well, could we be making things worse for our patients with treatment? And could they be getting more infections as a consequence of long-term exposure to these therapies as they go into their 7th and 8th decades of life?
Right.
And so that's a very key question. Is the benefit still exceeding the harm that potentially could be done? Right. So we need to address this. I don't have a simple answer for it. I wish there were a known answer. Right now, I think many people are looking at living with MS for their entire lives and probably being on a disease-modifying therapy for much of that. And I think as our patient population gets older, and with the fact that our best therapies do have some toxicities associated with them over the long term, we're going to absolutely have to turn our attention to this critical question and address it and answer it in a meaningful way with more research in the years to come.
Okay, well, let's talk about side effects for a second, because I don't even believe in the term side effects. I think it's effects. Medication has effects. So some of them are good, some are bad. So this question comes in. I've heard that some MS medications can cause serious side effects, which makes it hard to weigh the risks and benefits. Some treatments have been around for years and they have well-known safety profiles, while others are newer, feel more cutting edge. How should people think about the trade-off when deciding on a medication?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is more germane, I think, as people are either starting treatment after diagnosis or perhaps switching therapy in the face of suboptimal outcomes with an existing treatment. And the issues of balancing therapeutic efficacy with adverse event profiles is key. There are off-target effects, and especially for the small molecules that are usual chemicals, they have, oral therapies often have off-target effects and are unrelated to the target that we're after. And so those have to be balanced out, as well as the potential for more serious adverse events. I think the big one in MS that is of concern is PML. Yeah. And many of the therapies that we use are associated with just enough weakening of the adaptive immune system that patients can develop this very serious brain virus infection caused by an endogenous virus that many people carry in their kidneys, that can get out of the kidneys, get into the blood, get into the brain, and cause a very serious brain virus infection. So some treatments are associated with this, not all. And then the individual has to decide for themselves what level of risk they're comfortable with. Are they willing to go on a treatment where they can reap the benefits of a highly effective therapy, accepting a small risk, but a real risk of having PML? Or is PML just so scary to them that they are unwilling to accept any treatment associated with PML?
Yeah.
And fortunately, we have other therapies that are available. They're not quite as good, as effective, I should say, as our highly effective medications, but they may be a better choice for that person. And so we have to always work with the individual, go through the risks and benefits, explain what the overall risk profile for each product is, and help that individual come up with a choice that's right for them.
Let me ask you a really important question, because people get to a place where they hear about a new medication, when should someone switch medications? When should they ask about switching of medications? Have you gotten to the point where you go, you know what, I want to try something different? And, was it tough for you to ask your doctor about it?
Not at all. Well, the first one that I asked about, which I had been on Copaxone, like I told you, I had been on this, couldn't do it anymore, and saw on the TV a commercial for Ocrevus, and I said to my doctor, excuse me, can I be on that instead? So I asked him about that, and I went on Ocrevus for a couple of years. And no, I'm happy to ask for different things. I'm now on a medication that my doctor had another patient on, and she was doing really well on it. So I said, well, let's try that, because I was on this other one, Tysabri, which I was on for like a year. And I'm on this other one now, and I haven't had really any adverse effects of any of them so far, besides the Copaxone.
Is there a common indicator with patients where they go, you know what should people be looking out for?
I feel like that's always brought up by the doctor, unless the patient,
but there's just so much information out there now.
Yeah, that's the problem in a bit.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things that are often tipping points for people. So if people have a bad relapse on a treatment,
Right.
and they've disappointed with the therapeutic efficacy, especially if they're on a less effective drug or like a platform therapy, absolutely we have options for them, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great place to consider switching. I think if people are getting worse, if they're experiencing disability worsening and they're on a platform therapy, platform therapies mean the drugs like the interferons and glutamers and teriflunomide, the less effective medications. Moving somebody from a less effective to a more effective medication is a great idea.
Yeah.
If somebody's got new disease activity on surveillance imaging, I also think that that's not a bad idea to move patients along there. There's increasing evidence to indicate that disease activity as measured by brain MRI probably isn't good for you. Surprise, surprise.
Right.
We do have, fortunately, therapies that are very effective today, and the market also has taught us this, that many patients are choosing to go on the highly effective treatments at baseline. And market share now has increased for the B-cell depleting antibody therapies, and now that's the dominant player in the U.S. market. Most people are on a B-cell depleting treatment, and so they reap the advantages of having drugs on board that pretty much silence radiographic disease activity and reduce relapses to an absolute minimum. And so then, the question is, when do you change there? And where do you go from here? And so we don't really have drugs right now that are better and more effective than the B-cell depleting antibody-based therapies. We're in the process of developing drugs that may provide some advantages over the B-cell depleting therapies with respect to disability progression. Remains to be determined. We don't have any head-to-head trials yet. But that's a great question. So I think we're probably heading in that direction. And if I were to speculate where we might be looking at in 5 years' time, I could see a good reason to think that we might be using drugs in combination, where we have a drug like a B-cell depleting therapy to suppress the peripheral immune activity, and then another drug that's active within the central nervous system to suppress that ongoing, what we think is microglial-based inflammation and address that central nervous system ongoing inflammation that we can't get to with our antibody-based therapies. So maybe we're going to use things in combination, and maybe that combination is going to give us what we really want, which is a complete suppression of disability worsening in our patients.
All right, I have a really important question. Somebody just got diagnosed with MS. What should they be thinking right now?
That there is a lot of hope, that there are a lot of medications that can really keep you from becoming disabled. It's a really exciting time, which doesn't sound good, but it's an exciting time to at least be diagnosed and have a lot of hope for a very bright future.
And doctor, what about you?
Well, Amanda nailed it. I think that today the prospects for patients living with MS is radically different from what it was 25 years ago in the pre-treatment era. And Amanda said it. We have treatments that are highly effective, that can suppress disease activity and have a low personal burden. Some of the therapies can be administered in as short a period of time as 1 hour and administered as infrequently as twice a year.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Right? So if you think about it, like, compared to where we were with a drug that had to be injected into the skin every single day, which would cause skin site reactions and side effects and lipoatrophy and was kind of disfiguring. And you're taking a shot every day compared to coming in and getting an IV infusion twice a year for over an hour. This is night and day when it comes to tolerability. And it's also night and day when it comes to efficacy. The modern therapies are much more effective than the older therapies. And so the vast majority of our patients who are newly diagnosed, as long as they're diagnosed in a timely manner, are going to probably do very well. And their chances are very, very good at not getting worse over a 10-year interval. So I think this is a very important point to bring to every single patient. And I think, Amanda, your comments about being overwhelmed, absolutely, this is an overwhelming process. Support is critical. Having people you can speak with, which can be your providers, of course, but other people as well, is critical. If you are depressed, pharmacological intervention can actually make a big difference.
Sometimes you don't even know it's depression. Sometimes you're anxious, and that is depression masked as anxiety, I think. And it does bring a lot of anxiety. And to suddenly become a patient, when you never were a patient before, you're always just perfectly fine. And it does a trick on you. I mean,
it takes the wind out of your sails.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about people that have had MS for a long time, and they become a new patient of yours. And then in your situation, you've been dealing with this for a number of years now.
Yes.
So you meet somebody else who has been dealing with this for a number of years. What advice or what do you discuss with them?
Well, everyone's different, as Dr. Kreese said. Everyone is different. It's a snowflake disease, it's called, because it's not the same in any two people. I have other friends with MS, and none of us are the same. But I would say the biggest advice, or the biggest thing, I think, is, like we said, use it or lose it. Like, you've got to keep active. Like, if somebody says, oh, I'll come over and do X, Y, or Z for you, go, no, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to try and do this on my own. I'm going to try to walk every day. It's really important to keep active in every aspect, if you can. It's a luxury. When I hear people say, go for a walk, it'll make you feel better. It's like, not everybody can go for a walk.
Right.
But you do what you can, and it's really helpful because it keeps your brain remembering, like, oh, yeah, I know how to do this thing. Like, my doctor said, oh, my right hand is kind of a mess, right? But she goes, oh, you played guitar? And I said, yeah, I play. She said, just play it. It doesn't, I go, but it doesn't sound good. And she said, no, just play it, because it reminds your brain that your right hand knows what to do. It reminds your brain that you have a right hand. So use that.
Yeah.
It's
and I remember
really
from years ago, you weren't very good.
No,
So
I
it
was
doesn't-
never
you're
very
not
good.
really
I mean,
comparing
honestly,
to
I was
anything.
such a hack. It was like hacking at the guitar. And I play piano too, but like, it is important to keep using this thing that you think is like not going to function as like it used to, but at least it functions a little, and use that because it reminds your brain. That's what I would say.
Top that, doctor.
I
That's
bet
pretty
he
good
can.
advice.
No, yeah, it's great advice. And I think as we think about our patients who've had MS for a while, and they're coming in and they want to know what's new and what's available, not all community providers are up to date on the latest advances. And so one of the things that our job is to stay on top of what's happening and what the current developments are, and hopefully cross our fingers that we're at the forefront of many of those developments. So we share that information with our patients. And then another thing that sometimes community providers are great at doing, but not always, is symptomatic management and making sure we're addressing individual symptoms. People who live with MS for a while tend to have accumulated some problems associated with MS, and you have to ask those questions. And sometimes these are difficult topics that people may not want to talk about. And so you have to ask as a provider and probe a little bit and make sure that your patient's doing okay and that all their domains or function are being adequately addressed. And then as Amanda was talking about, we also have to think about holistically the entirety of the organism, the overall health of the person, and making sure we're addressing comorbidities correctly. And comorbidities often wind up setting the pace for MS. So making sure that patients who have hypertension are getting treated for their hypertension. If they have diabetes, that they're getting on a medication for their diabetes. And sometimes it's difficult to convince people to take care of themselves, especially when it comes to these kind of chronic healthcare conditions.
Right, of course.
And we have to partner with our primary care physician colleagues to make sure that adequate care is being provided to our patients. So all of this is critical from the medical perspective, and then from the life of the person perspective, absolutely, having getting exercise every day, eating a nutritious and healthy diet, and doing activities that you like doing that give your life meaning and joy, whether it means hacking a guitar, or painting, or gardening, or cooking, or whatever it is that you like to do,
or eating processed foods. No, that's not what it is.
Back to your ice cream and pizza diet. Yeah, there we go.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on. I mean, the empowerment, the knowledge, all of it all comes back to talking about it. And for you to take time to come on the podcast and talk about it, for you to talk about this.
Oh, it's so exciting for me.
It's exciting, but it's also brave, and it's just wonderful. It is. I'm sorry. We talk about epilepsy. My son has epilepsy. It's like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to hide from. And it's such a great community. The MS community, as we're learning, is just so big, unfortunately. But with heroes like you at the helm, and I just cannot thank you enough for educating all of us.
Well, thank you. I don't know about being a hero, but thank you so much. It's been great speaking with you both, meeting you, and having these conversations. I hope this is help to those who are listening, and I think we've covered a lot, really, in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Super.
So good to meet you. So good to get your knowledge, to take it in and have it, to add it to my own. It's so, so great.
Thank you so much.
That was an incredible episode.
So good.
I'm so bummed that it's over, that our conversation with
I want to hold him
Dr.
hostage
Cree.
and ask him questions for like a month.
He's so great. By the way, that's a horror movie. Oh.
We just came up with the next best thing.
I think that's a great launching point, these 2 episodes for a series. And I hope we get the opportunity to do this.
I do too.
There's so much and so many aspects of life. The MS community is starving for this.
Yeah.
And it's a very unique approach that I think the 2 of us have. And the guests will be amazing. Anyway, cannot thank Dr. Bruce Cree enough.
He was the best. He was great. Yeah. So knowledgeable and so good at reinforcing the idea that and the knowledge that the future is hopeful for people that have been newly diagnosed or even have been diagnosed a long time ago.
I didn't get any fear. I didn't get any. It's not so clinical you don't understand it, and at the same time, it's easy to absorb and empowering, like you talked about.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this with me.
It was so fun. Thank you for having me.
Are you kidding me? And thank you guys for watching, for listening. Please share this to anybody in the MS community and outside, because people need to understand what's going on with MS. There's a tremendous amount of stigma and misunderstanding, as there is with every disorder or disease. But this one needs to be understood, and that's our job. So hopefully we'll get more opportunity to do it.
I hope so.
I love you.
I love you too.
We love you.
We love you too.
We would like to thank Sanofi and Mylan Specialty LP, a Viatris company, for their support of this educational program. We also want to thank the Consortium of Multiple Sclerosis Centers, CMSC, for their valued partnership in this initiative.
This podcast is a production of the Talk About It Company and Motel Podcasts.